Hello and welcome to Third Eye Africa TV. Democracy is the game, and the program is Democracy in Action. We want to look at 2027, the path so far, and what will be the role of the media when it comes to elections and election results. Is the media always hitting up the polity? Is there fake news? And what do the policemen, let me call it this way, or rather the administrators of the broadcasting sector, what are they supposed to do when it comes to fake news? This and more we shall be discussing with a man who tested it all. I'm talking of the National Broadcasting Commission of Nigeria. When it comes to broadcasting, where someone is injured, you lay your complaints there. Where they feel somebody has been injured or broadcasting is going awry, is going bad, of course they bring in the hammer. We've seen it done, and we therefore felt that as Nigeria moves towards 2027, we should invite an administrator, a former head of NBC, to come and tell us, let's discuss how the media is always fearing when it comes to elections and election management in Nigeria, especially when we're talking about announcing of election results, or when you feel that some people have been over-profiled, or when there are no equal platforms for media organizations to either feature political parties or feature candidates, and quite a lot of other things that hinge on insecurity. My name is Ben Adam Shemang, regular host of this program, and I felt I should invite a former Director General of the NBC, talking of National Broadcasting Commission of Nigeria. I'm talking of Professor
Armstrong Idachaba.
Armstrong Idachaba. Can you imagine? Somebody will move always with the name trying to escape. Nothing fashioned against us will prosper.
Ami, Ben.
You're welcome to Third Eye Africa TV.
Thank you very much, Ben.
Now, Prof, let's look at the path to 2027 and the role of the media in terms of ensuring election integrity, election being managed information-wise. Give us an insight.
First of all, good evening, viewers, or good morning, no matter the time you're watching. First of all, Ben, let me say it's a great honor and privilege to be with you. I'm happy that you have not let all your experience and exposure, to just waste away. You are contributing to the industry nationally and globally. I'm very proud of that.
Thank you
I'm
very
also
much.
glad that you hinted me that you are doing some books. I think that is very, very inspiring.
Yes.
We'll be looking and waiting patiently for the release of your book.
Yes.
Having said that, again, I think it's important that preceding the 2027 elections, that we begin to re-examine, to reinterrogate the role of the media, especially the Nigerian media, in promoting democracy. There's no doubt that before the advent of modern democracy, of course, the Nigerian media played its role. You remember the pre-independence days in terms of the agitation for independence. Of course, we had activists turned journalists, we had politicians turned journalists, all of them contributing their ethos and their intellect to ushering in an independent democratic environment. And after that, if you follow the trajectory of the Nigerian political evolution, the media has had a key role in post-independence and in all the levels of the republics of politics that we have engaged in. But the role of the media also in terms of navigating and promoting or enhancing democracy will always also come under the X-ray, or it has also come under close examination to the extent that some may begin to think that the media is not playing the role it ought to play. Others may even think that at certain times the media also plays some divisive, if not an even negative role in terms of projecting or establishing the democratic culture. But I think the good way to begin this interrogation is basically to say, okay, what then should be the natural, critical, constitutional role of the media? Obviously, it is supposed to educate the electorate, by providing information. It's supposed to cover the activities of all the facets of the democratic process, including also a close examination of those who play roles within the equation. It's supposed to shed light on where there's malfeasance. It's supposed to give credence and visibility, to segments of society, allow access and pluralism, and also cross-examine, where issues are, and then draw lessons from past examples and provide clear guidelines for the future. So as we approach 2027, what lessons have we learned before then? Where are we now, and what do we need to do ahead into 2027? For me, the critical question will be, what is the level of media access, in terms of promoting the democratic space, the culture of political engagement? How many Nigerians today engage in the democratic debate? How many of them are opportune to listen to manifestos, and campaigns of the political parties? Are the parties even using the media to propagate their manifesto and ideals? If they are, what kind of messaging are they doing? Are they conveying the messages appropriately? And like I said, how many people are really listening to them? How many people are watching them? How is the media doing the projection? Is it balanced, or is it lopsided? So these are the key issues. Pluralism, yes, there are pluralism. Thank God for the deregulation of the industry from the traditional monopolies we had, including yours before. We have a deregulated environment. So many, up to about 600, 700 broadcast stations in Nigeria, placed side by side with the new social media. Then you have a plethora of channels, that are running, across different platforms. So, truthfully, yes, there's been increase in terms of platform availability and supposedly media access. But I also noticed from what I read recently, and the statistics are not very good, that in spite of the fact that there's media availability and media presence, of course, there's a huge disparity, in terms of rural access and urban access. Urban access, from the data that I even tried to write here, what they did say that in terms of rural, 14.2% of Nigerians actually have, in the rural area, actually have access. Compare that to about 85% urban access. So that's very disproportionate, and that is in spite of the fact that there's internet. So these are things that I think that as a country we need to work on. Yes. We need to work on more population, getting access to the media, and then participation is key. Yeah. Not just access.
Yeah, absolutely. Because going back to history, the media before independence was that of a fighting media, because people like Zeke had their own newspapers, and theirs was to fight against the colonial masters. Awolowo had his own, Tribune, to fight against the colonial masters. Same thing with Ademu Alakija. He had people like Hubbard Macaulay, quite a lot of them, and Ajolo Chukwu, many of them, up north, Samadu Bello and other. But you see, the fight was against colonial masters. Let's have independence. But it looked like, some people will say, after independence, journalism therefore became a personal kind of a thing. I mean, politicians had the media organizations, they'll just promote their culture, themselves, and regions. And so how do you place that? Today, it looks like some people are also having media organizations just to promote their ideals.
Yes, it's interesting. In my study, because I also taught a few years ago, I was opportune to teach Nigerian media history, some of the courses in the Nigerian University, and also at the Institute of Journalism. And what I found out basically was that the Nigerian media has had to confront with certain national challenges at certain stage of the Nigerian state evolution. You know, pre-independence, the big monster in the house was the colonial administration. Now, when the media fought the colonial administration and succeeded, you know, we now got independence. I think it went into a period of lull and a celebratory period. Then comes military administration, you know, and then the dictatorship, you know, the control, you know, the gagging of the press. So the press now had a new enemy, which it confronted, you know, and fought for the liberalization or the democratization of Nigeria, not independence this time, for democracy. And a lot of media practitioners also paid the price. Many were killed, many were bombed, many were imprisoned, you know, but of course, thanks to the press, you know, we now have a country that is quote unquote democratic. You know, and I think we are in the Fourth Republic, or I think in the Fourth Republic, and then we are marching on. Now, the big question is, what is the monster that's confronting the Nigerian state currently? And there are several of them. Corruption, right, is a big one. Now, has the Nigerian media been able to fight corruption? At certain times, what we see is an attempt. Then at some other times, what we see is more like a conspiracy. Or at certain time, the media is more or less is overshadowed. You know, it is also consumed, you know, by the extreme influence of corruption and capitalism. You know, and that has weakened the media. And what do you see over time? I have seen personally that the way the state and the political class have done to diffuse the power of the media is by deliberate commercial material inclusiveness. You know, what do? When a politician comes to office as speaker or governor, he goes to carry the vibrant journalists like you, chief press secretary, government spokesman, special advisor in media, you know. And so you find out that all those are skilled and highly talented. At the point, all the presidential spokesmen, you know, for many administrations are editors, you know, from Nigerian newspapers, carefully selected. Those who used to write thought-provoking backpage stories. So you see that there's been some kind of there's a strategic winning over of the media. But more importantly, I think that the Nigerian media is not being able to identify what the central point of challenge should be. You know, and that is in spite of the fact that there are so many issues that can actually form the agenda for the media. Incidentally, we are talking about one. We are yet to get the electoral process right. And then the good question to then ask is, has the media really addressed its mind and identified, you know, the credibility of the Nigerian democratic electoral space as a major issue? I think that the day we do, you know, as a group, I think we will add value and probably add to the solution.
Yes. Now, if you also look at ownership of the media, every state government has TV, radio.
Yeah.
Then you also have, and of course, every state is headed by a politician. Mm-hmm. You had Raymond Dokwesi with AIT. You have Atiku with Gotel, TV, radio. Then you have Uzo Kalu with the Sun newspaper. And so you have President Tinubu with TVC, Nation newspaper. So it's like, look, everybody has to be in charge or control the media to ensure that, look, even if I have a political enemy, I can do some whitewashing via my own media.
There's no doubt, Ben, that politicians have often understood the power of the media. And politicians invest in the media, not basically for material profit, you know, but for the great advantage of influence. And it's not unique to Nigeria. It's all over the world. The Murdochs, you know, the owners of... Recently, I heard that Donald Trump, with some of his partners, have indirectly, through acquisition and investment, been able to acquire somehow the CNN, you know, to the extent that I read a review that even CNN editorials that used to be the establishment and Republican, you know, are beginning to be pro the Trump administration. So is the order of politics. And you are right.
The same Trump that closed down Voice of America. Very unheard of.
So it's true. And I like the example you gave about Nigeria. You know, there's no strong Nigerian politician that has not invested in the media. And for us, you and I think it's a catch-22. You know, it has its advantage and disadvantage. Many media practitioners, even when I was at the NBC, would say, okay, why do you people give license to politicians? You know that you people are responsible. You know that these people are politicians. You get, but I told whoever cared to listen at that time, the basic explanation is that broadcasting is not just a social service. It's also a business. It's a commercial enterprise. Nobody says people with money who can get a license and set up a radio station, so long as they don't have criminal records, you know, will be allowed to run a broadcast station. It's just the same way that every Nigerian, whether you're a politician or not, can run a school, you can run a hospital, you know. So the expectation is that people with capital can inject into broadcasting. But what is dangerous is that the owners of broadcast stations and media outfits do not only set out them as business, they then now want to suffocate the editorial liberty, you know, of the professional managers of those stations. They want to control editorial content. And that is the one that is saddening. You know, we hope that the day will come when Nigerian media professionals like you know, will have the courage, you know, the guts to say, well, I'm a professional here. I have the editorial responsibility of running what comes out on this station, and that there are ethics that govern, you know, my profession. But what we see more often is that the professionals, quote and unquote, they normally will cave into pressure. I was reading about Stanley Masibu recently, the guy who set up Guardian, you know, and he was brought from the UK, or you know, to help reform the Nigerian national newspaper, the Daily Times.
Daily Times, sir.
Now he was editor of Daily Times, and at the point he thought he had the liberty he did well to reform it. But one day he came and he saw a certain chief of staff to the president or somebody very high key in the military administration now correcting the news bulletin with his biro. So he resigned. So he resigned and went and found the Guardian newspaper, which later emerged as one of Nigeria's best, most credible flagship in terms of the print. So, but what that also illustrated to me that is that the urge, you know, the tendency for those in power, you know, to use their power to control editorial content is not new in Nigeria. It's been there. It will continue to be there. And it's not only in Nigeria, like I've said, it's all over the world. But what it does is challenge professionals like us, you know, to stand up to our professional calling and insist, you know, that broadcasting and media practice must be done according to the ethics.
Now, in terms of this ownership, we look at the side of government, for example. Voice of Nigeria, federal government, News Agency of Nigeria, federal government, National Nigerian Television Authority, same thing, federal government, just like FRC, federal government of Nigeria. Now, if you, in terms of funding, truly, it looks like these people just feel, oh, they are ours, therefore, budget or no, go and manage this. When indeed broadcasting is serious financial packaging. Then if you go to some state governments, okay, I give you the example of my state, where you have a state radio, Kaduna State Broadcasting Service, or big corporation, you hardly can hear them in Zaria. You now have a booster station that cannot reach Makarfi. Then you have a booster station in Kavanchan that cannot reach Manchok, that cannot reach Sanga or Kwai. You begin to imagine. So, are people not being shortchanged? Government information, nobody is holding them accountable. And government is refusing to sink money into all of this. Meanwhile, they're waiting for when something is set against government and they bring the hammer on the management. So how do we come out of this?
I think what the point you are raised is actually central to the whole idea of Nigeria's media policy. I think that our policy framers actually missed the point when we kind of situated government broadcasting as public broadcasting. And that's an error that has to be corrected. Government broadcasting, is government that's set up for government, for purpose of government, and that's obviously what we have. NTA has an act, Voice of Nigeria has an act, Radio Nigeria has an act, the Kaduna Media Corporation, they have an act. And Ben, I assure you, if you go to read them, the first thing you see is that those stations are actually set up to promote government business. So the allegiance, the prescriptive allegiance of the stations ab initio is to government. Now, but what happens in true public broadcasting framework is that the broadcaster, is answerable to the people. Is answerable by law to parliament. That is the case of BBC. The BBC Charter does not place the BBC in the control of the British government. And because of that, BBC gets its funding directly from parliament. It doesn't go through the executive. You get the point. So BBC does not have to wait for who is the president now, the prime minister. They change them a lot, and they don't have to wait for him to allocate money as we do in Nigeria. So BBC is self-funded, and even if it engages in other activities, it's just being innovative in a way that they want to probably take care of other charities or other projects that they want to do, but they are totally well-funded, and that's the case. Even with Voice of America that you mentioned earlier, the money comes from the American parliament, and it goes direct, to the public broadcaster. So to answer your question, what we have as government stations, which we wrongly ascribe and describe as public broadcasters, are not in the real sense public broadcasters. So we need to get the concept right, and that is why, for instance, the federal government can say, okay, NTA. There's what they call envelope system. Radio Nigeria 10 part. This is your budget. And go and manage, like you said. Go and manage, and then it becomes very difficult to manage. In fact, some of these government stations are only surviving because their wage bills have been taken by government. But if they are truly public stations, then the National Assembly should put them in the budget and provide their money directly, not through any minister or through any other bureaucracy. So the government stations you have are actually media bureaucracies, and that is why you see the latitude and the tendency for waste. You say you have a booster station here. In most of those booster stations, their transmitters are dead. Then they say there's a general manager here, there's an assistant general manager here, there's this here, and even the stations they don't have enough money to even engage in technology. Otherwise, if they are well funded, from Kaduna they should set up transmitters that can cover the entire state by now, not by necessarily setting up multiple booster stations in an area that's probably small kilometer radius.
No. You see, Prof, I'm also asking this or saying this to share an experience. When the campaigns were so much against Goodluck Jonathan, from AP Plaza here down to Area 1, people were dancing and singing all sorts of songs, Nigeria, Jaga Jaga, and all that stuff. It was so offensive to government. So at the point they called the government media houses, I was there. I had to go with my DG. You could see security agencies. They were in that meeting. I don't need to call names. I said, no, you, the government media organizations, you are not matching the private media organizations that are covering these protests live. One of the DGs was bold enough. He said, how much money do you give us to match these people? When you have serious adverts, you carry and give the same people who are attacking you. Now you want us to match them. They are moving with mobile facilities that are of modern age.
Yes.
But today, we are left with going to cover and taking back to studio. Things will have to change. Give the money. Let's see if there's no one-on-one matching. But
Ben, it's not just the money. is the content trajectory. What has happened over the period is that Nigerians have lost confidence and interest in public broadcast or government broadcast. Because like I've said, all of them are set up to promote government. So the chances are that from VOA, from Radio Nigeria to NTA, if you monitor the news bulletin, it will begin with the president has said, the president of the Senate has said, the speaker has said, and government commissioned this, or the man...
People-centered, not issues.
Even government people-centered, not really the rural, the ordinary people. And Nigerians are impatient to say, well, this looks like propaganda. So they now wake up to see some young guys with suits, in a Rise studio or on Channels TV, and they are having a cup of coffee, and they are bringing experts that are looking at the economy. They are bringing experts that are talking other contemporary issues. So the eyeballs move there. So, but government has this assumption that it is the biggest media and therefore should exert the biggest influence. But what they forget is that if the people are actually following their media. So there's a need to dynamize. There was a time there was this effort to privatize, the government broadcasters. There was. They wanted to put them off for the Bureau for Public Enterprises, so that individuals can buy into NTA and buy into Radio Nigeria, and government will just have a share, and then that way, the stations will be able to generate their money. But don't be deceived about it. The reality still is that, in spite of the fact that government stations are enjoying competition, but because there have been monopolies and establishments over time, they still have a huge following. More so that government media perhaps is the media that has attempted to go to rural Nigeria in spite of profit. The commercial stations will not go to where the profit is, unless where the profit is. But government has an obligation will say, okay, set up this radio in my constituency, NTA in my constituency, in all the senatorial district. And so in many rural areas in Nigeria, that is perhaps the only available media. So they exercise some kind of control. But in terms of main media followership, where the eyeballs are going, of course, the private stations are carrying a chunk. So government truly, and I remember this time I was part of the information management architecture, and even at the level of the regulator, questions were asked. What is the regulator doing? To balance a situation where it appears that government is getting a bad rap in the public, in the open media space, and of course, part of it was basically, that government also has to be able to be more forthcoming in terms of information dissemination. I don't think that's always been done. I think I was having a discussion with you, where you were sharing some of your own experiences with me, and you did make the good point that where government is open, there's a that actually douses tension and neutralizes the potential for mischief. But where information is cocky and it's been held up, or information is being manipulated and controlled, of course you will expect those that are not under the firm control of the government to go the extra mile, to be more investigative, and as they do that, they become more attractive, and more believable. And then the government media definitely runs into problems.
Yeah. Actually, we were talking about crisis communication management.
Exactly, which
Remember
is the focus of your book.
Yes, I mean, my book is coming.
Yeah, the focus of your book. Very interesting.
Where we're talking about, like, what happened in Kaduna State, Kajuru. The local government chairman, the commissioner of police, were all saying, look, nothing happened, show evidence. So when it was so clear that it actually happened, it was the governor who took, the mantle of leadership to do the public relations himself.
Now, let me stop. Let me halt you and say, when you said it became obvious not on the government public broadcast platform, but from the private media sources.
Absolutely.
So you get the point.
Yes.
So until government gets to the level, of professionalism or openness, to also reveal information, be more accountable and open to the people. That trust deficit will continue to exist. And believability will not be there.
Yes. And when President Tinubu went to Turkey and just stumbled on something, falling down or something, you could see that the presidential aid came immediately. They acknowledge it. So look, it happened, but it's natural. He's a human being. See, that's an example of crisis communication management. Accept it happens. Don't sweep under the carpet.
But let me extend the debate a little. Let me ask you a question. If that
even though I'm the one asking the questions.
I know. If that Turkey event had happened in Nigeria under the camera of NTA and Radio Nigeria, would they have quickly accepted?
Well, you see, you can't sweep that under the carpet, bearing in mind that there's always the social media.
The social media.
So we'll come to discuss more of this as we go on break, especially what does it take, therefore, for the media to ensure that they don't overheat the polity. Elections are around the corner, no fake news, no coinages whatsoever, and no a kind of profiling some politicians against the other, a certain community against the other. What will be the role of NBC that you were the Director General of? My name is Ben Shemang. I'm talking with Professor Armstrong Idachaba. Want to welcome you once again to Third Eye Africa TV.
Thank you, Ben. Good to be with you.
So, even though this is Lent, will you want to sip some water? I will not test your faith.
That will be done off camera.
So, we go on break. Welcome back from this break. And we still have our guest, former DG of the NBC, National Broadcasting Commissioner in Nigeria here, and the program is Democracy in Action, and my name is Ben Shemang. Professor Idachaba is our guest, talking of Armstrong. Now, as we move towards 2027, what should be those booby traps that the journalists should avoid to ensure that the sledgehammer is actually not being brought on the journalists, on the media organization, and questioning the credibility of the media?
Thank you, Ben, and thanks also for returning us to the core of the engagement. Now, what I see over the period is that as the election period draws closer, there is a tendency for the political class to build tension using the media through divisive rhetorics and abusive comments. I'm sure at this time, if you're in Kano, there will be a lot of verbal rhetorics. The group they call Sojojin Baka, that they engage in attacking political opponents, in spewing innuendos, in castigating and, like you said, profiling, those in opposition. It will increase, and it's not only in Kano, it's all over the country. You'll find political activists now coming, trying to sell agenda, for their political parties or their political representatives or candidates. And in doing that, they can get very careless. They can insinuate a lot of things. We are beginning to see what you call intemperate language. And it's not only between the lower class of the political system, not just within even their media apostles. It's also happening among the leadership. Let me not be specific, but I know that 1, 2, 3 top politicians, have been arrested, and they are not keeping quiet. They are spewing a lot of things. Some of them are seemingly, ordinarily confidential, but they are there just for political statements. So you see a heightening of tension, a heightening and reckless use of intemperate language. And what I see is that there's increased intolerance. Unfortunately, Ben, I also see that among the crop of some of the journalists we have, we are beginning to find, some anchors, some presenters, also engaging in the vulgar diatribes. They are also counter-crossing in terms of the engagement. I've seen politicians accuse certain radio, TV stations of open bias. even using insulting words, and some presenters and also abusing some of their guests back, all in the name of politics. Now, we need to be wary of that. It is not decent political communication, for people to be intemperate in their language. It is not decent political communication for people to be abusive. It is not decent it doesn't enable democracy, if people engage in divisive ethnic rhetorics, which is what we are beginning to see, divisiveness, allegations, and unsubstantiated statements. So those are the immediate threats that I see. And beyond that, I would expect that the media should begin to interrogate, in partnership with the civil liberty organizations. We should be able to interrogate certain aspects of the last elections. The things that were done that weren't right, the things that needed to be done that will enable our democracy. Good enough. We have had some discussion on the use of electronic transmission of results. The media coverage, the media debate around it is engaging. But now that it's been signed into a law by the president, now, what is the media doing in terms of explaining that law to Nigerians? What has the media done in terms of further exploring, what the opportunities and some of the challenges may be? I am particularly worried, and I said this on one other platform, that the last presidential election, one of the major minuses was a reported glitch. Now, has the media been able to investigate what that glitch is? Nobody has really told us, what created the glitch, how it happened, and how that glitch can be avoided. Are there other things behind the glitch that we don't know? Or is it likely to happen again? So the media has to be more, it has to be more anticipatory in terms of what may evolve in 2027. And I'm beginning to see signs that there will be challenges. But of course, like I said that in my opening comments, in terms of pluralism, in terms of participation, we are beginning to see increased elements, though there's still some degree of marginalization in terms of suppressed voices and lack of representation of certain demographics.
Yes, exactly.
Yeah.
Especially at the state level, where in a state radio, state TV, all you hear is the state governor, His Excellency, Dr. Alaji, Menene, double chief, and all that stuff, all the adjectives. And you hardly can hear the voice of opposition. So what do we do in terms of making the platform, a common platform, 50-50 to all? Is it possible that you give government 50 and give opposition 50? So how do we come out of this? Can a general manager give 50-50 and survive when a governor is fully in charge?
Anyway, there are various dimensions to the implementation of the ratio principle, and the principles of equity in terms of regulation. Now we are entering into the regulatory space. Now, what broadcast regulation says, especially during political campaigns, is that there must be, first of all, equal opportunity.
Equal platform.
Yeah, equal opportunity. Meaning that if you are doing a program and you say democracy in 2027, if you invite APC, you should invite PDP, you should invite ADC. You should invite all the political parties within the space to participate in the program. Now, the question is, and if you do that, you are supposed to log it. You are supposed to record that.
In a logbook.
Yeah, that a political logbook, political broadcast logbook, where you say you invited this party to this program. That will clearly show on the dashboard, an attitude of inclusiveness, that you've been fair and giving equal opportunity to all the political parties within your space.
Except the one that refuses to come.
Absolutely. And the evidence will be there that they were invited. Now, in terms of space, airtime, what it actually says is equitable airtime, quote, quote, equitable. Now, equitable airtime will now mean, in terms of rationality, meaning that there will be other considerations like size, like presence, like dominance, and it is true. Some political parties exist only in name in certain locations, right? And probably in a state like Kaduna, they probably have only one ward office. They are unable to open offices in all the other locations. So if you say come and do a program, you may not even find a representative. Now, are you going to give your airtime, to a non-representative political party? No. So but the opportunity must be given. But in terms of the allocation of time, then it becomes equity. Again, also influenced by your capacity to pay, because though you are not supposed to commercialize political participation, but of course, they are supposed to pay for their jingles, and other kinds of advertising that they do, and jingle, when you air their jingle or the sponsor projects, you mention them, of course, ordinarily you find them more mentioned. So it's possible for Kaduna State government, for instance, because it is produced by APC, to direct the GM to say, okay, carry our jingles. We are going to give you money, and I don't know if it has changed. The political season really is this provision of equal opportunity and equitable airtime that even used to give some of those state governments some money. Because when they allow opposition to come, they pay. The people who control the state government say, we are paying your salary. Mm-hmm. So how can you tell us to come and pay for jingles?
Exactly.
So it creates a lot of
there have been complaints where, yes, the state governor says, this is coming from His Excellency. Yes. Just play them like that, unedited. It does not matter whether somebody is being attacked. But the opposition is coming and say, pay. But our experience in Third Eye TV here is that those who actually turn down invitations are mostly the smaller parties. Yeah. But the bigger ones will always come because, you want to give equal opportunity. Yeah. You just say, I will come. You create space, you don't see them. They call again, no, tomorrow. So by the time you don't come twice, okay, we just know maybe you are publicity shy or something.
No, that aside, they don't have the finances.
Yeah, but you see, sometimes, we're talking about also trying to live up to our own social responsibility to society. Yeah. Talk and let your people know what you are saying. Talk and let people just see what you are made of. Not that some people will come and just, they are always dominating. We are not talking about the very big political parties. Everybody is engaged. But one other thing.
But I challenge you to do more. Apart from inviting you, you can go to them. They will be very glad.
Yeah.
Try to go to them once in a while, and you'll find very interesting stories.
I agree with you, but you see, when you say a platform, if I invite the chairman of PDP, I should look for chairman of APC. Yeah. I should look for chairman of Labour. But when you now say, okay, chairman of Accord Party, come. I'm calling them because they keep on shifting ground and all that stuff. So, but let's go back to issue of the social media. Yeah. How can that be controlled? Because these are people you just wake up, His Excellency has won in a so what? And some other people will misinterpret His Excellency has won the election. As how do we take care of the social media?
Anyway, the social media has come for good and bad. What I can say about the social media, which is true, is that every society, every government has woken up to the consciousness that the misuse of the social media can be dangerous to society. So many countries are setting up the Social Media Act. Every country is creating, EU is creating one form of regulation or the other. I think that's a major step because the social media is just a platform. What is important is the content, right? And it doesn't matter what platform. Content that is injurious, that is misleading, is misleading. If a content is not fit for broadcast, then it's not fit for the social media. The social media should not have an evil advantage, over traditional media. But I think that the social media has undone itself in some ways, in terms of the fake narratives that is spread, the inaccuracies that is spew. So people are now becoming wary. If you hear anything on social media now, you take it with a pinch of salt. You say, let me wait. You say, let me wait.
Yes. Is it in the traditional media? Is it on any television station?
Third Eye don't talk out.
Exactly.
NTA don't talk out. No, don't celebrate it until you hear it. So somehow you can see that credibility and integrity pays off. So the social media has to buck up. What I see is that, well, there are some social media sites that tend to retain some level of credibility. And that's why you also find out that the traditional media, especially on the print, is also moving. Even people are on the social media platforms. It's just that your modus of trade is more professional and ethical. And so because of that believability and credibility, people will be with you. But the what you call the pirate journalists, that we gloriously call citizen journalists, they will continue to do their thing. It's an avenue for mischief and entertainment. They will continue to do it. It's just that where they run foul of the law, or where they exhibit a tendency to create harm to society and other people, then they will fall under the hammer of the law. Even in Nigeria, people have been arrested and detained and prosecuted in court on account of what they say on social media. So my appeal to you, your manager was saying we should talk to the public, is that those who use the social media, please be careful. There are editorial policies and guidelines regards to what you can write. Let it be truthful, let it be believable, let it be authentic, let it be accurate. But that you have a tool in your hand and you think you can just use it to declare election results, even where results and election is not completed, it's misleading. You can create chaos. What the law says during election is that only INEC can announce official results. So wait for INEC. When INEC reports the election, the same way that Third Eye will do and Radio Nigeria will do, you take it from INEC, not for you to go to the world and say, okay, even by this morning, the way people are coming out, ADC has won. That's quite misleading. I hope we don't do that during the election.
Yes. Then a final one is the intention, always the motive. Some politicians will always try to rock the boat. When it's clear, the path is clear, it's like they won't win. And therefore, no, we can capsize the canoe, let everybody sink, a kind of. Also, how do we distinguish what a real politician is saying, the lies he's giving, and of course, some loyal friends in the media? How do we strike a balance?
Again, that is politics. As we were talking, my mind went back to Donald Trump, the election that he lost, is it to Biden? Even when the the votes were being counted, Trump was all over the place shouting, that the election has been rigged, the votes have been stolen, and all of this, and he accused everybody, that had a role to play in the Democrat. So politicians will always complain, especially where they are losing. They are what the people you call sore losers. They lose, they shout, and but what is key is the credibility of the umpire and the credibility of the reporters. If the electoral umpire is believable, is credible, people will listen. I mean, without comparing people, there was a time that anytime Jega spoke, people thought, of course, that he was a man of conviction, and there was a tendency to believe, So we hope that we'll have other electoral people within the electoral process, that will have the professionalism, the temerity, the discipline to radiate believability, trust among the Nigerian people. About politicians rocking the boat, they will. And that is why I said, even in terms of their verbal utterances, you are beginning to see, abuse of decorum, and that is it. Sometimes politicians think it's a good way, to engage the political space, and that reminds me about something I want to share with you. Politicians have a way of recruiting, journalists that are dangerously outspoken, those that can be very abusive. They engage them during the political process, when campaigns are coming up, you see them. And the main criteria, Ben, is that they know that they can abuse people. They are courageous enough to to lie against opponents and they give them those top jobs. So I don't know. I hope you also do some orientation among the journalists.
Exactly,
Yeah.
and I think that that's why we have the Nigerian Guild of Editors.
They should do something.
Yes, we have the NUJ.
They should do
and
something.
Each media organization, you also have what you call some codes of ethics, and some ethos as to how to handle politicians, handle your news, and without being injurious to a party.
Good.
Even if you don't believe in him, but why don't you write what has taken place?
And just be objective.
And even the theory of social responsibility.
Yeah.
If this story is going to rock the boat, this story is going to bring spilling of blood, why don't you simply step it down?
Be more responsible.
That's social responsibility.
Yes, right.
And it is here that we have to come to the end of this program, Democracy in Action. And it came to you through Third Eye Africa TV. Our guest has been Professor Armstrong Idachaba. I want to thank you for coming to Third Eye Africa TV.
Thank you, Ben. Again, it's my pleasure to be with you.
As usual, yes, proudly Nigerian.
Good to see you.
Thank you very much.
And I wish you well on Third Eye. Yeah.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. Nice being with you. Bye-bye.
Yeah, bye.